In this episode of the Junior PenTester training series, we're going to be talking about all about vulnerabilities. So understanding what they actually are, finding the vulnerabilities of an application or your target system, whatever it is that you are trying to exploit, and then how to find more information about that inside of the various databases that are available as far as vulnerability research is concerned. And then we're going to be taking essentially all the information that we've gathered so far, right? Because we're inside the Junior PenTester, so we're basically doing pen testing. And everything that we've done up until this point has been around gathering intel and finding more information about our target system so that we can go ahead and find specific vulnerabilities for that system. And then in the next module that we're going to do, which is 3 videos from now, in that next module, we're going to be talking about exploitation and using Metasploit and all of the cool things that really takes the intel we've gathered and applies it so that we can go ahead and exploit and hack into various machines. So that's where it becomes really, really fun. So for this particular video, obviously we have our intro, just like everything else. Then we have the intro to vulnerabilities, scoring vulnerabilities, and then we have these various scoring systems. Then there are the databases that house information about these vulnerabilities, the example of finding a vulnerability, showcasing, meaning exploiting the ACME application, which is going to be our example target application, our application that we're going to try to hack in this particular video. And then we have the conclusion. And this is actually a free room that's available inside of TryHackMe. So you basically just need an email and password. That's basically all you need. And you can access the room, you can access the sample application that we're going to be hacking and all that good stuff. And there are literally hundreds of free rooms inside of TryHackMe that you can get access to virtual machines and attack boxes and all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff available on this wonderful platform. This is why I'm such a big fan of them. And then the person who has created this room for us is CMnatic. And this person has actually created a lot of different rooms as well that we've used in, I mean, at this point, probably like hundreds of the videos that I've done. Maybe not hundreds, but at least dozens of the videos that I've done have been developed by CMnatic. So big shout out to CMnatic. And I feel like is it the Odd Parents that like this image that's over here? I wonder which cartoon that's from. I recognize it. It's something that's very familiar to me. But anyways, okay. So that's basically the overview that we have for this video today, for this episode today. I'm going to give you a quick little introduction to Hackaholics Anonymous, and then we're going to dive deep into it. If you're serious about your CySec education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us jump into Vulnerabilities 101. So you should know by now that cybersecurity is a big business. It's a really big world, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger as technology continues to develop. And you will hear every once in a while that there are actual hacks that happen to really big companies. And usually when you hear about those hacks, the really big ones that are of note, they're the ones that cost hundreds of millions of dollars to the company. But the average hack in the world is about $4 million per cost, right? So the average hack costs about $4 million to the company that's being targeted. So just because it's not hundreds of millions, it doesn't mean that it's not a really big dollar amount and it's not important. So it's a really good idea for you to know about this world, which obviously I'm not telling you anything new because you're literally sitting here watching this video. So I'm not going to spend too much time on that specific topic. But the enormous part of penetration testing, or one of the bigger parts of penetration testing, is knowing the skills and resources for whatever situation that you actually face. And this video is going to introduce you to some of these things. So for example, finding out when you're researching vulnerabilities, what the vulnerability actually is and why they're worth learning about, or how they're actually rated and the databases that you can use for your research. And ultimately, at the end of the video, we're just going to do a showcase where we actually take our vulnerability research and apply it to our target, which is ACME, ACME company, and we've used that specific example in a few different videos as well. So this video, again, we're going to be talking about vulnerabilities. If you are unfamiliar or if it's something that you have not heard of at all before, then you'll have something to learn. if chances are that you've already heard about a vulnerability. The word itself is very definitive, like, so you just by thinking about it, like if you do some critical thinking without getting any other definitions, the word vulnerability, it says a lot about what it is that we're going to be discussing. So it's more about how these things are actually rated and finding the various databases for them that I think is going to be most valuable for a lot of people. And for some people, this is just going to be review, and review is always a really good thing. It's a review for me as well. So review is always really, really good. This is how you internalize information. So that being said, let's actually do the introduction to vulnerabilities. All right, so I love this image. This is one of my favorite images when it comes down to a bug. It's a mechanical bug. It's a very, very cool image. A vulnerability in cybersecurity is defined as a weakness or a flaw in the design, implementation, or behaviors of a system or application. But essentially, the term vulnerability implies weakness or flaw, right? That's basically the big picture of this. Now, in this context, in cybersecurity, what are we talking about? We're talking about systems and applications and networks and all of that stuff. So vulnerabilities in this context just have to do with the weaknesses in those systems or in those networks or in those applications, right? Very simple to kind of wrap your head around. The attacker can exploit these weaknesses to gain access to unauthorized information or perform unauthorized actions. And this term, the term vulnerability, has many definitions by cybersecurity bodies, meaning the various companies and entities and nonprofit organizations and governments, all these various entities, they have different definitions or their own versions of the definition, but the variation of the definition is very, very minimal because it all pretty much says the same thing. They just have different words to describe the same thing, basically. So, for example, NIST, which is the National Institute for Standards of Technology, they define it as a weakness in an information system, system security procedures, internal controls, or implementations that could be exploited or triggered by a threat source. That's what a vulnerability is. So a weakness that can be exploited. That's really all you need to know. So they can originate from many factors, including poor design of an application or an oversight of intended actions from a user. And we're going to be talking about the various types of vulnerabilities in a different video. But for now, we just need to know that there are arguably 5 categories, right? So 5 main categories. So we have the operating system vulnerabilities that are found within the actual OS and often result in privilege escalation. So somebody gets in as a low-level user and then they escalate themselves to an admin. Then you have a misconfiguration or just a configuration-based vulnerability, which comes from incorrect configurations of applications or services. So a website exposing customer details is a configuration of that website, and so it technically is a misconfiguration if it's exposing customer details. Then there's weak or default credentials and services that have an element of authentication, meaning a username and password basically. They come with default credentials. So for example, the Nginx web server. So if we do what is the default username password for Nginx web servers, right? So let's do that, like the default, right? That when you install it, that's what it comes with. And typically, as a web server, it doesn't have default username. Okay, so this is not the good example. So let's do another one. If we do, let's say, I'll do it this way. So how about this? We will do for Apache. So let's say it's Apache. Let's see if Apache has it. And it says the web server itself doesn't have default username and password. I'm using complete bad examples for this. So let's do this. This one I know for a fact has it. So this is the easiest one typically. And it's this, right? Kali is the default username and password for live virtual machine images. And a lot of times for persistent installations, meaning that it's been installed on the hard drive, there's no default username and password. But when you do a live or virtual machine image, there is a default username and password. So third time is the charm. I finally found a default username and password. But usually, more often than not, if you actually go and search for whatever the target machine is and see, just go with this question, right? What is the default username and password for XYZ, like whatever the target machine is, the target operating system is, typically you'll be able to find something unless they're the first two examples that I gave you. So an administrator dashboard may have the username password of admin, meaning it's both admin, and that could be the case for a lot of different softwares that are installed for Wazoo or something like that, where like as by default when you install it, it just has admin as the default username and password, right? And then it's up to you as the administrator of that specific service to change the default username and password. Then there's application logic that are a result of poorly designed applications. So poorly implemented authentication mechanisms that may result in an attacker being able to impersonate a user. That could be one thing. And then the big one, which is the human being. So anything that has to do with the human error. And really, when you think about it, this has to do with a human making an error. This has to do with a human making an error. This has to do, and then this has to do with a human making an error. So everything that we've talked about so far, in some way or shape or form, was a human being that was, I don't know, they overlooked something, or they were lazy, or they forgot, or something, right? It was some kind of a human error. And these are the things that leverage human behavior. For example, phishing emails are designed to trick humans into believing that those emails are legitimate. So human factor errors apply to a variety, like pretty much everything, in my opinion. They apply to everything because in some capacity, a human being had an oversight somewhere and they didn't do what they were supposed to do. But then there are specific targets and vulnerabilities that actually target the human being directly, something like a phishing email or a vishing text message or something like that. Smishing, I should say. Smishing text message. Vishing would be from phone calls, stuff like that. So as the researcher, you're going to be assessing applications and systems using vulnerabilities against these targets in a day-to-day life. So it's crucial to become familiar with this discovery and exploitation process. So an attacker has been able to upgrade the permissions of their system account from user to administrator, and this is known as a privilege escalation, or so maybe not that. So it says it was over here. So what was it? Oh, it's operating system. That's what it is. So it's the operating system that they are exploiting. You manage to bypass a login panel using cookies to authenticate. What type of vulnerability is this? So if we're talking about login using cookies, so this could be application logic, right? So let's go and look at that. There you go. Cool. All right, so now let's go and score the vulnerabilities that we find. In vulnerability management, one of the big things you're going to be doing is evaluating, categorizing, and ultimately remediating these vulnerabilities or the threats that come from these vulnerabilities that apply to the organization that hired you, right? So it's impossible to patch and remedy every single vulnerability, arguably, right? That's the debate, because if it's a big enough network with a big enough infrastructure and thousands of different users, you're going to be limited on the time and energy that you can implement towards patching these things and mitigating and remediating vulnerabilities. So the big portion of what you're going to be doing is trying to figure out the score of them, the severity of them, so that the most severe are the ones that will be patched. So only approximately 2% of vulnerabilities ever end up being exploited, and this is according to Kenna Security. And instead, it's all about addressing the most dangerous ones and reducing the likelihood of an attack vector being used to exploit a system. This is where vulnerability scoring comes into play, and it's a specific role in vulnerability management, and it's used to determine the potential risk and impact that may have on a network or a computer system. So popular common vulnerability scoring system, also known as CVSS. This is a really big one. When I was studying for the CYSA examination, this was a very, very big topic. So knowing about it, knowing how they are ranked, and then knowing when you see the scoring system, and this is something that we also talk about in the CompTIA Pentest Plus playlist. On the vulnerability analysis section, we took a very deep dive into the common vulnerability scoring system so that people can just know how to read it, not just the numerical value, but you'll see a few examples of it, but there are just different values, key value pairs that are a part of the CVSS system, which ends up leading to the final score that it gets. So you have to be able to read those key value pairs, understand what they mean, and ultimately understand what the score means. But usually, if you just see something that has a really critical score, it's like a 9.5 out of 10, that means that, you should just go ahead and patch it, and you should go ahead and try to figure out a way to mitigate it, right? You don't necessarily need to know the ins and outs of everything. If you know that based on a scan that you ran, that, oh, this is a 9.5 severity, we need to go ahead and address this right away, right? So in the world of IT, there's never just one framework or proposed idea. So we're going to look at some other ones. So the Common Vulnerability Scoring System, introduced in 2005, is a very popular framework for vulnerability scoring and has 3 major iterations. And the current one is CVSS v3.1. Version 4.0 is currently in draft, and a score is essentially determined by the following: how easy is it to exploit the vulnerability? Do exploits already exist for this vulnerability? Meaning, can somebody just copy paste an exploit and be able to take advantage of it, get into our systems? And how does this vulnerability interfere with the CIA triad? And we've already talked about this as well. So you have the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. And this is the opposite of disclosure, alteration, and destruction. Meaning, is confidentiality going to be compromised if this vulnerability is exploited, right? Do we lose important proprietary data? Are they going to be able to alter our data? Are they going to be able to alter our systems so that when somebody tries to use it, or when we try to send information to somebody, it doesn't work and it's incorrect information? A really, really good example of this is somebody is trying to transfer money from one bank account to another one, and then there's a man-in-the-middle attack, and they change the transfer information, and instead of it being transferred to account B for whoever the target is, it actually is transferred to account S for the attacker, right? And so the attacker is now modifying the integrity of that data, of that request, and transferring money to their own bank account. And availability has to do with whether or not the system is available. So if the website right here, right, the TryHackMe website that I'm accessing, if it was not available to me, then TryHackMe is going to lose reputation. They're arguably going to lose money, and it's going to cost them headaches and energy and time to try to fix all of that. So it has to do with availability. So is the vulnerability easy to exploit? Is there already an existing exploit for it that somebody could just easily use? And how will this interfere with the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of our network and our company? So there are a lot of variables that we can use for a calculator to figure out the scoring of this framework. And the vulnerability given a classification out of 5 depending on the score. So let's first go check this calculator real quick, because I like these kinds of things that exist for us. So here's the calculator. This is based on the 3.1 version of the CVSS system. The previous version was 3.0, and the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. So these are the equations, I guess. So show the equations. This is what the whole thing looks like, in case you actually want to go through that. And then you can go down here, and this is what I was talking about, right? So these are the various elements of a specific scoring system for CVSS. So first, there's the attack vector. So if they have to be on the physical machine, right, they literally need to be on that computer. If they have to be on the local network, it's different. If they have to be on an adjacent network, it's different. And if they can access it from a network, meaning that over the internet from a different country, that's arguably the least secure, because they don't have to be on site, they don't have to be on the machine itself. If the attack complexity is high, then okay, it's complex. They don't have to know a lot to be able to do it. But if the attack complexity is low, that means that pretty much anybody can pull it off, right? Any rookie user, amateur could do it. Are there privileges required? Are there low-level privileges, or are there high-level privileges? So if there are no privileges required, again, it increases the severity of the vulnerability. Is there user interaction required? If there's no user interaction required, or if there is user interaction required, right? So if there's user interaction required, that means that it requires another step for this exploit to actually affect the system. If there's no user interaction required, then we can just launch it without anybody else being involved. The scope would be what? If it's changed, it can affect resources beyond the authorization privileges intended. In this case, it can be impacted, and everything else around it can also be impacted. And then unchanged means that it only affects the resources that are managed by that same specific authority in that same system. And in this case, the vulnerable component and the impacted component would be the same. So we'll do changed. I think changed would be a higher vulnerability. And then you have the impact metrics, right? So confidentiality, integrity, or availability. So if I say that all three of these are impacted on a high level, now we have arguably, we have the most severe type of vulnerability that I just created right here. So if I go up here, the overall CVSS score is 10, right? Because everything is affected, and now we can change this. So if I say the scope is unchanged, it brings it out to 9.8, which is still a really big deal because confidentiality, integrity, and availability are all highly impacted. Now, if I take it from the network level to requiring to be on the physical machine, it changes it from 9.8 to 6.8. So that's an increased level of security. If I take the complexity from low to high, it takes it to a 6.4. If I take privileges required to a high level privilege, it goes to 6.1. And if I require user interaction, now it's 6.0. But still, it's fairly high simply because of the fact that these three metrics are all high level metrics, meaning there's high impact going to be happening against these things. So if we change these to none now, then the overall CVSS score is now 0, right? So I can leave all of these as none, take that to change, take this to network, low, and then do no privileges required and none, and still all of this stays at 0. Mainly because of the fact that what? All of the impact that's happening over here is none. So if the impact metrics are all none, then the overall CVSS score is going to be low. It has a high exploitability score because you don't need privileges to do it. You can do it through the network. The complexity of the attack is low, but the impact on the actual metrics itself, or the impact on the infrastructure and the systems themselves, those things are low. Now, if all of these things were high, right? So, I mean, I already did this, so I'm not going to keep going back and forth. But you also get to see what the difference in these things ends up being. So as I change this, there's this piece right here that's being changed as well. And this is how the scoring system looks like when you look at individual vulnerabilities. So when you look at these elements right here, and if I go over there and look at this piece in the center of the screen right here, this is the piece that says, okay, the attack vector, we can see it a little bit closer. The attack vector is network. The attack complexity is low. Privileges required are none. The user interface or user interaction is none. The scope is changed, and confidentiality is high, integrity is high, and availability is high. So when you see this is how it shows up in the examination. They don't give you a breakdown the way that we just saw right here on these elements at the bottom right here. They give you a breakdown like this. And then when you look at this kind of a breakdown, you have to be able to read it and figure out what it actually means and ultimately how it will impact your systems. So this is the ranking system numerically. So the rating, if it's no worry or no, I guess the severity, right? The severity would be none if it has a score of 0. If it's low, that means it's going from 0.1 to 3.9. If it's medium, it's going to go from 4.0 to 6.9. If it's high, it's 7.0 to 8.9. And if it's critical, it's 9 to 10. So if you see anything that is critical, you have to address it right away. If it's high, you should address it within the day or within the next couple of days, and then so on and so forth. So you start from the most critical, and then you work your way down. That's basically what the scoring system does, because there's a really good chance that if you're working in a really big company, there are going to be a variety of different machines with their own sets of vulnerabilities, and there will be too many vulnerabilities for you to address right away. So you have to address all of the most critical ones first, and then work your way down in severity. So CVSS is not a magic bullet. So we can look at the advantages and disadvantages of the CVSS in this specific table. So it's been around for a long time, but it never was designed to help prioritize vulnerabilities. Instead, just assign a value of severity. So you would have to prioritize vulnerabilities. So if there's something that's critical, right, but it doesn't pose an immediate threat to the most critical systems in your company. So it could be critical, but it could be critical against one computer that's standalone on its own subnet in a basement somewhere. And if that computer gets exploited, it doesn't really mean anything to the rest of your network. But if there's something that's high and it's on your database server, that should be addressed before you look at the stuff that's critical on that one computer in the basement, right? So it doesn't help you prioritize the vulnerabilities. It just assigns a value of severity. It's a popular one in organizations, but it assesses vulnerabilities on an exploit being available, and only 20% of all vulnerabilities have an exploit available. So there could be vulnerabilities that exist that nobody has written an exploit for, but they're still critical, and you need to go ahead and address them because somebody could then be hired to write an exploit. And just because it doesn't already exist in the marketplace doesn't mean that somebody can't go create an exploit and then take advantage of your system. And finally, CVSS is a free framework to adopt and recommended by organizations like NIST, and the vulnerabilities rarely change scoring after new assessments and despite the factors that new developments like exploits may be found. So just common advantages or pros and cons of this. So that was CVSS. And then we have the Vulnerability Priority Rating. This is VPR, and it's much more modern framework in vulnerability management developed by Tenable. And this framework is considered to be risk-driven, meaning that vulnerabilities are given a score with a heavy focus on the risk that the vulnerability poses on the organization itself rather than the factors like impact, which is what CVSS does. So unlike CVSS, VPR takes into account the relevancy of a vulnerability. For example, no risk is considered regarding a vulnerability if the vulnerability does not apply to the organization. So they don't use the software that is vulnerable, for example. So it has nothing to do with them. So why would they even think about it? Why would you waste bandwidth and brain energy on it? VPR is also considerably dynamic in scoring, where the risk that a vulnerability may pose can change almost daily as it ages. Now, the similar scoring range as CVS, and we have it in the table below, VPR does not have a none or informational category, and because it uses different scoring, the same vulnerability will have a different score using VPR than when using VPS. So it would be different. So there's no none. We just have low, which starts at 0 to 3.9. Then there's medium, then there's high, and then there's critical, which is very similar, 9 to 10, right? So the pros and advantages of VPR, it's modern and it's in the real world. It's not open source like other frameworks and management, meaning it probably costs money if it's not open source. It considers over 150 factors when calculating risk, and it can only be adopted as a part of a commercial platform. So again, it's not open source. And VPR is risk-driven and used by organizations to help prioritize patching, but it does not consider the CIA triad to the extent that CVSS does, meaning that risk to the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of data does not play a large factor in VPR. And scoring are not final and are very dynamic, and that's pretty much it. There's no con to that element. It's just they're not final, they're very dynamic, and it should be given and change as the vulnerability ages. So what year was the first iteration of CVSS published? This kind of stuff is like, these types of questions, I feel like they're like really irrelevant, because who cares? Like, why does that even matter? But I guess they want to know if you were paying attention or if you can scroll up and find the information. So 2005 is when it was developed. If you wanted to assess a vulnerability based on the risk that it poses to an organization, what framework would you use? And that would be VPR, right? So VPR is more for the risk that it poses to an organization. If you wanted to use a framework that was free and open source, that would be CVSS, because VPR is commercial. It's not open source, right? So now, since we have the scoring system, right, let's talk about the various databases that we can use to find vulnerabilities and maybe even exploits for those vulnerabilities. As the databases in the world expand, or I should say as the softwares in the world expand, so do the databases of the vulnerabilities for those softwares. So if you've never heard of a CMS, for example, it's a content management system. And for example, WordPress is one of them, right? And so when you're looking at various content management systems, although technically they're supposed to do the same thing in the grand scheme of things, they have different bells and whistles, they have different features, therefore they can have different vulnerabilities. And so to try to keep track of all of stuff can be very overwhelming. Therefore, we look at databases and we refer to these various databases when we're trying to find vulnerabilities for each one of these services, the softwares, the operating systems, the computers themselves, etc. So there are so many different types of systems and applications that you can try to hunt for vulnerabilities for. So in this particular section, we're going to be looking at NVD, the National Vulnerability, oh my God, I can't talk, you guys, the National Vulnerability Database, and then of course the exploit database, ExploitDB. I refer to this one a lot. I've looked at it for Google Dorking, Google Hacking, as well as a bunch of different pen testing exercises. It's a massive database of actual exploits that have been written that you can literally copy and paste, and some of them need configuration, so you do need to modify some of them in order to make it work for your use case. But for the most part, they're pretty ready to go. So if we look at these things, we need to make sure we understand some of the key terms before we can really dive deep into them. So the vulnerability itself, as we've already established, is the weakness or the flaw in the design, implementation, or behaviors of a system or application. An exploit is something that can take an action against that vulnerability. So it can take an action or a behavior that will utilize the vulnerability on a system or an application. So you're basically exploiting the vulnerability so that you can compromise the system or the application. And a proof of concept is a technique or tool that often demonstrates the exploitation of a vulnerability. So when you do a pen testing exercise or when you do a bug bounty, for example, and you tell the company, hey, I found this vulnerability, you need to explain to them exactly what you did, show them the proof that you were able to exploit the vulnerability, and then you need to give them the steps that they can take on their end if they wanted to replicate what you just did, because they need to be able to actually duplicate your work to establish that, okay, you know what, this was not a one-time thing. This person isn't talking out of their ass. They know exactly what they're talking about. And so we can now replicate the vulnerability, or replicate the exploit, I should say, to take advantage of the vulnerability. Therefore, we need to, fix this. And if it's a bug bounty or whatever, we need to pay this person, right? So the National Vulnerability Database is a website that lists all the publicly categorized vulnerabilities. These are classified under common vulnerabilities and exposures, also known as CVE, and then each one of these things have their own ID. And it starts with CVE, it's the year that it was identified, and then the ID number for it. So WannaCry is a really big one that we've used in a lot of cases for pen testing exercises. The CVE for that is 2017 because it was in 2017, and then the ID is 0144. So when you go to the vulnerability database, you can actually find vulnerabilities by just searching for keywords and seeing whether or not they exist, right? You can actually even browse through them based on the age of these things. So for example, looking for August 2021, the CVEs for the selected month, right? These have a release date in the year and month that you chose. So this is all August of 2021. These were all identified in August of 2021. So it keeps track of new vulnerabilities. It's not a great resource when you're trying to search for a specific application or scenario of vulnerabilities. Now, Exploit Database, as hackers, we use this a lot because you can find something during an assessment that would apply to specifically a software or application that you're trying to exploit, right? So you can look for snippets of code known as proof of concepts that are used to exploit a specific vulnerability. And this is kind of what it looks like when you land on the page, and we'll actually go through it, right? So if we go to the NVD website as well as the exploits, I open it up in a new window, now trying to open it up in a new window. If we go to these two databases, so this is what we have for the National Vulnerability Database. NIST, I would presume, is what they're looking for when they say who's the author. So we would say it's NIST, and it's not. So then I'm sorry. So it says using NVD, how many CVEs were published in July 2021? That's not the answer they're looking for. I thought the author of this is what they were asking for, so therefore they may be asking for the author of an NVD. But they're looking for the CVEs that were published in July of 2021. So if we go over here and if we try to look for the vulnerabilities by their dates. So if I go here and let's see what we can do here to actually search for them. I think there was actually a button right there that said search. So if I click on search, let's see what we can do. The vulnerabilities CVE database, and if we go through here, we should potentially be able to find it. Let's see how we can hone in on that. It might be under advanced, so date ranges, there we go. So last modified date, and they're saying for what month? July of 2021. So we'll go, basically, I think we can do 07/01/2021 like that. And then the last modified date, published date, let me see here. Okay, so this is what it's supposed to be like. So you need to put a space between these in order for it to work. And you would start with, 07/1/2021, and you would end with 07/31/2021, and then it would give you the full range, and then we can apply it, and we should be able to see it in the background here. And so it says publish date, there we go, publish date from July 1st to July 31st of 2021. And so over here, it says 1585 would be the total. So let's see if that's actually the right count here. And it's not, which is an issue. So 1 to 25 of 1585, and I want to say that that's the case. It should be that. So 1 to 25 of 1585. So why is that not right? Okay, so the answer is 1554, but just for your peace of mind, that is incorrect in my humble opinion. I did a search for this, and I looked what other students got, and very many other people got 1585. And it just, for whatever reason, the AI overview, it says the dashboard 1554 CVEs were published in July 2021. It's confirmed in the TryHackMe vulnerabilities write-up, etc. However, when you look at what other people have gotten, right, so answer is 1585. So this is the piece that I'm like, okay, well, what the hell? So there's a critical patch update, introduces a number of native network encryption changes to deal with, potentially, I think one of the reasons, again, no idea why it's 1554, because it doesn't make sense to me for it to be 1554, because the date range specifically that I looked for is all of July. So July 1st, 2021, all the way to July 31st, 2021 would be the full range, and that would be a total of 1585. So it just doesn't make sense to me for it to be anything other than that. Even if we subtract the first 25 of these things, I guess, there's something here that I saw at the very end that I'm thinking maybe that's the issue. So this piece right here, when we see these check marks right here, it contains data from CISA Kev info. I'm guessing that might be one of the reasons behind it. So we're looking at version 2.0. So if we do the version 3.1 maybe, so if we apply that, I don't know if that'll change. Nope, still 1585. So that piece doesn't change anything. If we look at other than data type, because again, this is the thing that just kind of bugs me when things don't work out, and it still shows 1585. So it's like none of these things actually have changed, and the CNA or what that part doesn't matter. That part doesn't matter. So if I do CVE specifically, so let's just change that. Let's see if that changes anything for us in the background here. So for the contributors themselves, that's what it is. Okay, so there we go. So the application here is that you have the data being pulled from CVE, and that shows us 1554 right there. That makes a little bit more sense. So just so you can make sense of it, the contributors right here need to be CVE, because you have the option of doing CVE or CISA ADP. And so if you just choose CVE, then it'll update the number to 1554. So that makes a little bit more sense, because for a second I was losing my mind. I was like, what the hell are you talking about, bro? Like it clearly says 1585. But so how many CVEs were published? That's the key piece that we're looking for. So on the vulnerability database, we're looking for CVEs. Okay, great. Now we can move on to the next question. So who is the author of exploit database? So let's go here, and we're looking for the author of exploit database. So where can I find that information? So there are a few things that make me believe that it's by OffSec. So OffSec is here. It's also at the bottom right here, OffSec Services Limited being the copyright element. So I want to say it's OffSec. So let's go see if this is actually the right answer. And great, that one we got much faster than the other one. Beautiful. So now we can actually move to finding a vulnerability. So in this particular task, we're going to find a minor vulnerability coupled with some research and the vulnerability databases leading to a much more valuable vulnerability and ultimately an exploit. So in an assessment, you're going to combine multiple vulnerabilities to get results. This is going to be more often than not the case. So for example, we're going to leverage the version disclosure vulnerability to find out the version of an application, and with that version, we can then use exploit database to search for any exploits that will work with that specific version. So applications and software usually have a version number, and this is usually left with good intentions. For example, the author can support multiple versions of the software and things like that. Or sometimes it's left unintentionally. But in this particular case, we can see that we have Apache Tomcat 9.0.17, and this is on this website. I guess I wonder if this is the actual Apache website. So with this information, we can then go through and search, filter on different exploits on exploit database to look for anything for Apache Tomcat 9017. And so if you go over here on the right hand side, you'll see that he just searched for Tomcat 90, okay? And from there were a bunch of things that showed up. So Apache Tomcat, etc., etc. One of them has a green check mark here, and the other ones have the red X mark next to them. The green check mark means it's actually been verified and it's validated. So they've ran it and they've gotten successful results from it. All these different ones right here, they may not necessarily have the check mark, but it doesn't mean that they won't work. So that's the other piece. So after searching for this, there are a total of 5 exploits that may be useful to us for the specific version of the application. So what type of vulnerability did we use to find the name and version of the application in this example? And the type of vulnerability that we actually used was the version disclosure vulnerability, right? So that was basically it. It's not that big of a deal. It's not like that long of a reading for this particular section. It's just that when they disclose a certain version of something, that by itself is considered to be a vulnerability. And so if you know the version of something, then you can go ahead and try to find exploits for that something. And then I'll give you an extra step in this process right here. So if I go over here and just take this piece with me, right? So if I go and copy this, and I go to a place that I am very fond of, it's called Shodan. So if we go to Shodan, and if we search for Apache Tomcat 9017, all of a sudden, we see that there are 83 results for Apache Tomcat 9017. And if we know for a fact that there are exploits on exploit database that exist for that version of Apache, we could technically go ahead and try to exploit any one of these. Now, these are just random machines all across the world, right? So they're literally based out of China, Germany, Korea, Brazil, United States, etc. So you got to kind of try to find the thing that's most relevant to you. So if you're, for example, trying to hack into Hetzner online, then that would be like, okay, well, let me see what Hetzner Online has as their machines and as the versions and services that are running, etc., etc. And then from there, you can see if you can go ahead and exploit this version of Apache Tomcat 9017. I don't know why I can't zoom in like all the way on it, but you could see it in the title of the page. That's what it says right there. So technically, if I went and tried to open this, if it was even accessible to me, I might be able to see it. If I would have clicked, once I click on that IP address, you can see that it opens up the details for that specific piece. And now it says the open ports are here, Apache Tomcat, and then the version of it. And it's not 9017, it's 9033. So that was a little bit misleading. If we go over here on port 8081, they have Apache 9017 in their title, so we can kind of conclude that that's what actually exists on this thing. And if we try to open it, oh, it's actually this specific website that says Apache Tomcat 9017, which is literally the actual screenshot that we have right here that was found. So that's kind of funny that we were able to find it. And it's on an IP address, and it's not a secure IP address. It's literally no SSL or TLS certificate that's on here. I didn't get any error messages or any kind of warnings to get to this website, so I'm kind of concerned about that. I wonder if I just exposed myself by just visiting that website or something. But that was pretty much it, right? So that was like that simple to be able to go ahead to Shodan and try to find something based on the version of a vulnerable web server that we can think of, right? And that was it, right? Very, very simple, very straightforward. And that kind of just sets you off on the path to try to find other types of attack vectors for that specific application or the version of the software. So now we're going to do our first showcase. We're going to exploit Acme's application, and there's a little site that's been attached to this that we can use for practical purposes and try to get more out of what we just learned. In this showcase, this is the story. It's our first week on the job as a junior pen tester at the PenTesting company. For the first engagement, you are shadowing a senior pen tester within the company. So we're going to deploy the site and follow the steps that the senior pen tester took to exploit a vulnerability against the IT services infrastructure. Complete the engagement, retrieve a flag, and that's basically all they give us. So I'm going to click on view site, and I'm going to stay zoomed in, but no, I think I need to zoom out a little bit just to make this a little bit more user-friendly for us here. Okay, so here's the scenario. So it says, it is your first week. I can't scroll down. There we go. It's your first week at the pen testing code. To ease into the role, you are shadowing senior pen tester. The senior pen tester has managed to find a vulnerability in the application and follow the steps and see what you can do. So we're going to continue this. And now here's what we got. So we're on their email, and that's basically it. Okay, so Kyle Hodgson, Acme IT Services, thank you for taking on the engagement. Please document every step, etc., etc. As a reminder, Acme's IT Services only want you to test this specific IP address. Any other IP or machine is out of scope. Good luck. So I'm going to highlight this piece right here and just copy it. I feel like we might need it later. And this email, can I read this email? Thank you for signing up. That's basically it. Okay, that's all we got here. So we're going to click next here. So at this stage, it has a public service that compiles some details about target company. As we can see, Acme IT Services provide IT services to 800 plus clients. This information is useful because we can begin to think of possible software that they're using for us to attack. For example, help desk or a support application. This is the company report, company info, established 2017, business type corporation, IT support services, 800 plus clients, etc. Danny Phantom and dphantom at acme.thm. So I'm going to start documenting some of this information because I feel like it'll be useful for us. So first, I'm saving the IP address that I got. And then the next one is the email address of Danny. So it's dphantom at acme.thm. That's his email address. We might be able to find that interesting or find some use about it later. All right, so the pen tester now moves on to the enumeration and scanning stage. This stage helps us establish services and applications running on their infrastructure. We can use the information gathered to begin, for example, a web server hosting a website. So recall from our email that we have this one IP address. Try scanning it for yourself. So we have nmap right here, and I'm just going to paste the IP address in there and run nmap. So we ran nmap, and let's see what we get as a part of our results. So we have 3 ports that are open, and one of them is SSH, the other one is HTTP, and then we have HTTPS. So very good. Now we have 3 ports open on that IP. So what is next? The junior pen tester has visited the target in their web browser and has been greeted with a login page, and there are some random passwords that we tried, like admin, and it wasn't successful. There's a version number of the application 152, and it takes note of this. So I'm going to jot that down too, just to keep this piece, just keep all of these things in mind. You know what I mean? Like you never know when these things come in handy. So you got to build documentation all of everything that you gather through the pen test. Okay. So we're going to now go here. So this is what we have: Acme portal 152, username, etc. And that's basically all I got here. Okay, so the Acme services use an application called Acme Portal that is a version number 152. We visit a vulnerability exploit database called Vulnerability Bank, and it stores details of vulnerabilities, etc. And they search for the software that discovered in the stage 3. They're lucky. There's one vulnerability listed for that, which is remote code execution, which we will do on port 22. So it allows commands to be executed on the target system, and we could use this vulnerability to gain access to the console of the target. So we're going to search for vulnerability bank for Acme portal 152. So I guess I don't know why, because they literally just told me this. So there we go. Search result 152 remote code execution. Great. So that exists. So now we are going to try to do this, right? So vulnerability against the web application on that. It's successful and abuses remote code execution to launch a reverse shell on their infrastructure. From here, we can look for files and valuables such as passwords, backups, or application source code. And so this is what they did. They ran the exploit against the URL for that, and it finished. And this was not that big of a deal because we didn't do anything. Like, they're doing everything for us, and they're just kind of telling us about the story that happened. So far, we didn't really have to do anything, which is, it's kind of underwhelming, but whatever. All right, cool. They ran the exploit, and they went from user at the pen testing company to administrator at Acme IT Services, and it says what their hostname and their username is. Okay, so that's it. That's basically it. And there's the flag. So this was not the most complex exercise that we just ran. However, it does walk you through the process, right? So the process is what? They gave us an IP address, and then with that IP address, we were like, okay, so we can go ahead and now just scan the IP to see what we can find. And we found that they had port 22 open, as well as port 80 and port 443. And then from there, we found that there was a version number on their login page. When we visited the IP address on a browser, we saw that it was a login page. There was a version number. We looked for that version number inside of an exploit database, and we saw that it's susceptible to the remote code execution, meaning that you can remotely log into it if you can somehow break into the system. And then they ran some kind of an exploit that did that for them. Now that part is where a lot of the heavy lifting is done. All the information that we did up until that point was reconnaissance. And in that one element where they're just like run exploit on this URL, that little exploit that they ran, that did the bulk of the work that got us into the system. So that was the key piece. And we didn't really do anything for that. We just saw the results of that. So that part, a little bit underwhelming, but you got to see the process. You got to see what it was like to get the IP for the target, to do some recon against it, and then find more recon to actually find an exploit that you can use. And then from there, we ran the exploit and we got into the system. So even though we didn't do anything crazy, we at least got the concept in our minds. We got the flow of the concept in our minds, that you start with recon and then you go through basic generation of data and find more information about the target and do more recon until you find something specific that you can potentially exploit. And that's the thing that is kind of like the big takeaway from this room and this video as a whole, is that you gotta find something specific, right? Just because we saw, for example, that they were running that Acme portal, let's say, and we're trying to find exploits for Acme portal, there are different versions of that Acme portal, and it may not necessarily, the one exploit that would work on one version may not necessarily be something that would work on another version. So the specifics is where the achievement of the main ideas are done and the goals are accomplished, is finding specifics, because literally by one, like a 0.01 version difference, something could have completely changed. So if you go from 1.5.2 to 1.5.3, the whole thing is different now. And that's where you got to be very, very kind of honed in. You have to approach it like a sniper in order to be able to pull this off. Otherwise, you're just going to be running around in circles, and you're going to be wasting a lot of time and energy and not getting the results that you're looking for. So the big piece that I took away from this, and I hope that you took it away as well, is that you do good recon, you find good information about the specific version of something that you're going to be attacking, and then from there you go look for an exploit to then find it and match it against the vulnerability and then attack it. And that's kind of the big takeaway for that. So hopefully that was actually insightful to you and you got some good information out of it. I went on a few different tangents because I wanted to expand on the information so that you can see more and learn more than what was just shared inside of this room and inside of this video. So I hope that you actually got value out of it. If you got value out of this video and you want to get more videos like this one, then I encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel, especially as we wrap up Jr.PenTester and as more videos about CompTIA Pentest Plus come out. And of course, as everything else gets rolled out on this channel as well, because there's a bunch of videos that are constantly going to be coming out. So hopefully you actually found value out of this. If you have any questions about what we talked about today, or if you have comments or you just want to say hi, drop everything in the comment section below and I will get to them as soon as I possibly can. I get all the comments on my phone, so I try to respond to them in real time as they come in. Some people get responses right away and they're shocked that I'm like so active on it, because I literally get notifications because I really care about this community. I care about this channel. So when the notifications for a comment come in, I immediately jump on it. So if you have any questions, if you have any comments, drop them in the comment section below and let me know what you think. And of course, make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel. If you're serious about your CySec education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the Supporter, Agent, Guardian, and Master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The Agent, Guardian, and Master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. I hope I see you in the Discord chats. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section. And that is it for today. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite networking system attacker/protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease. And I'll see you in the next video later. In this episode of the Jr.PenTester training series, we are now going to exploit vulnerabilities. And in the last video, we did the research on the vulnerabilities. We understood what they were. We understood how to find the details about them and how to stack vulnerabilities on top of each other so that we can go ahead and create an ultimate exploit, or at least find an exploit that will get us into the goal that we have. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to find out about the tools and the techniques and the resources that we can use to exploit the vulnerabilities. And this is going to be obviously a little bit more advanced than the previous conversation that we had. And hopefully it'll be more exciting, because this is where things actually really start getting really exciting when it comes down to hacking in general. Because up until this point, everything has fallen under research and reconnaissance and gathering intel. And at some point, you got to exploit all that intel that you found. So this is where it all starts happening. So the overview, we have the introduction, we have automated versus manual vulnerabilities, and then we have finding those manual exploits, example of manual exploitation, and actually the practical exercise of that manual exploitation. This is a subscriber-only room inside of TryHackMe, meaning you do need a paid membership. But for the most part, everything that we talk about, you can actually do on your own Kali Linux machine if you have one, because everything that we do here is on a Linux attack box, and then we're going to be exploiting certain target machines. So you can do all of that as long as you have a Linux machine. And if you don't know how to get one, there is a CompTIA Linux Plus playlist that I developed. And in the first video, in section 3, we talk about the installation of the various distributions. And so you can go ahead and get yourself a free Linux machine and install it on a USB thumb drive, and then plug it into your computer, and now you have a Linux machine to go, and then you can do a bunch of stuff. So that is it. It is developed on TryHackMe. I'm a big fan of TryHackMe. If you've seen any of my videos, I sing their praises all the time. And CMnatic is the person who developed this particular room for us. So big shout out to CMnatic, and gratitude to CMnatic for doing this work so that we can go ahead and learn and use that for our further development. So that's pretty much it for the overview of this video today. I'm going to give you a quick little introduction to Hackaholics Anonymous, and then we're going to dive into it. If you're serious about your CySec education and want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the Supporter, Agent, Guardian, and Master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The Agent, Guardian, and Master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us jump into the exploiting of vulnerabilities. The intro today is pretty straightforward. We're going to go over some means of identifying vulnerabilities and coupling our research skills to learn how they can be abused. Additionally, we will find some publicly available resources that are essential additions to your skill set and the tools when performing vulnerability research and exploitation. And then we're going to apply all of it to the practical challenge at the end of the video so that we can test our mettle, as they say. We can see whether or not we learned what we were supposed to learn. So that is the full introduction, super quick introduction. So let's go into automated versus manual vulnerability research. There is a myriad of tools. I love this word. I use this word all the time. There is a myriad of tools and services available in cybersecurity for vulnerability scanning, and that falls under the automated vulnerability research, right? So ranging from commercial and or open source, and vulnerability scanners are convenient means of quickly canvassing an application for flaws. In the world of cybersecurity, any commercial tool can actually cost a pretty penny. So it can be pretty expensive because what they're doing is they're selling them to really big companies. And so a company like Microsoft, for example, they technically have their own vulnerability scanners and all that stuff, but big companies, I don't know, think about it like a big trucking company or Boeing or something along those lines. These really massive companies that they're not in software development have to find a vulnerability scanner, and they can afford to pay $1,000 a month for it. So these vulnerability scanners cater to these massive companies because paying $1,000 a month is nothing to those guys. For the small people, when you have a small business that only does $250,000 a year, $1,000 a month is a really big bill, because literally $12,000 a year is too big of a chunk of money to spend on a security scanner. So most people will rely on open source, and a lot of companies that are doing $1 million, $2 million a year still will go ahead and rely on open source, mainly because the fact that, again, it's just too expensive to be paying for something when really technically a lot of the open source stuff could actually be as useful for you. So the vulnerability scanner Nessus is a really big name, and Nessus is used a lot because it has a free community version and it has a commercial license. And the commercial version costs thousands of pounds for a year's license, will likely be used for organizations providing pen testing services or audits. And if you'd like to know more about these guys, you can just go ahead and look at the TryHackMe room for Nessus. And I'm actually curious if I've ever done this. I don't think I have. Nope, I have not done the Nessus room. So it should be a pretty straightforward room as well, because it's an easy room. It can be done in 45 minutes. There's the intro to it, installation of it, navigation scans, and it will just do one scan. And that's kind of basically it. So it's not that complex of a room. And it's not that hard to do. Like vulnerability scanners, you just need to identify the target scope, and then from there you just run the scan. And from there, you look at the report, and then you look at the information that was gathered in the report, and you go do further research and see which ones are the most critical that you have to fix right away. Vulnerability scanning as using an automated tool is not that complicated. The hardest part is installation and then identifying the scope of the scan. That's kind of like the hardest part. And then you just click scan, and then you walk away for a couple hours, and you come back, and then you look at your report. So not that big of a deal. The advantages and disadvantages of using something as a vulnerability scanner are below. So you have automated scans. They're easy to repeat. The results can be shared within a team with ease. However, people can often become reliant on these and not have a strong foundation. The pro would be these scanners are quick and can test numerous applications efficiently. The con would be they're extremely loud and produce a lot of traffic and logging. So if you're actually doing this for a black box pen test and you're not supposed to show up on network traffic, this is not the way to do it, because they will show up on network traffic, and then the defensive team is going to be like, yo, somebody's scanning us for vulnerabilities, and that's a big no-no, and then they'll block you and all that stuff. So And if you're trying to also bypass firewalls and the like, so intrusion detection systems or firewalls, again, you can't because the vulnerability scanner is just too loud. There are open source versions of scanners. The open source solutions are often basic and require expensive licenses to have full features, and automated scanners cover a wide range of different vulnerabilities that may be hard to manually search for, but they often do not find every vulnerability on an application, which is why you need to get good at manual scanning as well. Frameworks like Metasploit often have vulnerability scanners for some of their modules, and this is something that we're going to learn in the next module in the Junior PenTester pathway. We actually have an entire module dedicated to Metasploit. Manual scanning for vulnerabilities is often the weapon of choice by a pen tester when testing individual applications or programs because it involves searching for the same vulnerabilities and uses similar techniques as automated scanning. It's just that it's more in your control and it's not as loud because you can kind of disguise your activities. Both techniques involve testing an application or program for vulnerabilities, and it could be security misconfigurations, broken access control, insecure deserialization, injection, among a variety of different things. So if you just want to read through this, I'll just pause the screen, 3, 2, 1. You can pause it and read through that. And then the last one, 3, 2, 1, and you can pause that and read through that. So, but these are just a handful of vulnerabilities that you can scan for or be on the lookout for, but there are very many more. So the OWASP framework is a really good one, especially when it comes down to web applications, because the OWASP people have the top 10 list. So the OWASP top 10 list is one of the big industry standards when it comes down to the top 10 vulnerabilities that exist against web applications, and that list gets updated every like 3 or 4 years. They're working on a 2025 version right now, but the most recent version is the 2021 version, and they still have not released the 2025 version. There's even a room inside of TryHackMe that shows the top 10 vulnerabilities outlined by OWASP, but again, it's not the most recent version, and by the time that you go through that room, there may be the 2025 version that'll come out, and I'm sure at that point, TryHackMe will then release a 2025 version of the OWASP room. So here are the questions that we have. You're working close to a deadline for your pen test and need to scan a web application quickly. Would you use an automated scanner? And so, I mean, yeah, if we want it to be quick, so we're going to say, yay, we will do that. You are testing a web application to find that you are able to input and retrieve data in a database. What vulnerability is this? So if we go and look at this, right? So it's most likely injection, when an attacker is able to input malicious data into an application and be able to do something. So that would be, for example, SQL injection, because if it's in a database, right? So databases technically can be relational, and so SQL is the structured query language that has to do with interacting with databases. So if we're going to retrieve data from a database, then most likely we're going to be doing an SQL injection attack. And you manage to impersonate another user. What vulnerability is that? So broken access control most likely would be the thing. So when an attacker is able to access parts of an application that they're not supposed to be able to access otherwise, meaning that they have now gained access that they shouldn't have because they were able to impersonate somebody. So that would be broken access control. Okay, cool. So now let's find manual exploits. Okay, so Rapid7 will end up being the first example that we're going to talk about. And so, like exploit database, we talked about it in the last video, and the National Vulnerability Database, Rapid7 is another vulnerability research database. And the only difference between this one and all the other ones is that it also acts as an exploit database. So using this, you can filter by the type of vulnerability and then be able to find potential exploits, right? So vulnerability exploit database, basically. So the database contains instructions for exploiting applications using the popular Metasploit tool, which again, we're going to be talking about this in a few videos. For example, the entry on Rapid7 is for WordPress plugin SP project and document, where we can see instructions on how to use an exploit module to abuse this vulnerability. So it actually gives you the line by line. So once you're inside of the Metasploit framework, the command line actually turns into MSF when you see right here. And then you would say use exploit, and then you give it the full path to the exploit. And then the exploit, the command line changes. So you can see this forward arrow right here. once you're using that exploit, it'll actually change, and then the arrow moves right here, meaning you're actually inside of that exploit. And then you say show targets, and then it'll show you whatever targets. You probably have not set a target once you've entered it, so you would have to set the targets. And so then there's the next command, set the target, and then you would give it the target IP address, for example, or the URL. And then you would do show options. This is what I usually do. I don't do show targets. I always do show options. And when you do that, it shows all of the options, including the current targets and the current settings, etc. And then from there, I know which ones I need to set, because it will also show you the required options that you would have to set to actually make that specific exploit work. Each exploit has its own required options, so you just need to know what those things are and set all the requirements, and then any other ones that you need to modify. And then you can go ahead and run exploit, which is the final command that will actually make it run, or you can just type in run and press enter. So either exploit, enter, or run, enter, and it'll actually make it run. But this is a screenshot that was retrieved from Rapid7 for this specific vulnerability. So it actually gives you the line by line to use a specific exploit inside of Metasploit, which is really handy. Then we have GitHub, and if you don't know what GitHub is, then you need to go to Cybersecurity 101 and go to that playlist and learn about GitHub. So you should already know what GitHub is. But one of the big things that's available here is that security researchers have taken this because of the aforementioned reasons as well, and they store and share their proof of concepts for exploits. So it's extremely useful in finding rare or fresh exploits, because anyone can create an account, upload, but there's no formal verification like there is with alternatives, meaning if you find a piece of code on GitHub, you don't know if there's malware that's injected inside of that code. You don't know if there is some kind of a compromise inside of that code. So you need to be very careful what you actually download on your computer and you run from your computer, because the GitHub repository that was placed on there to be an exploit for a target could very well be actually exploiting your machine as well. So it uses tagging and keyword system, meaning that we can search it by keywords such as POC or vulnerability and many more. And at the time of this writing, there's 9,682 repositories with the keyword CVE, and we're also able to filter the results by programming languages. And so at the time of this writing, that's 1,419 days ago. It's over 3 years ago. So it's kind of old. So I would assume that by now there's way more than 9,682 repos. Then there's SurfShark, and this is a command line tool to try to find something that has to do with the exploit database, right? So if you want to search through the exploit database, but you don't have access to a browser, or you're on a Linux machine that doesn't have a graphical interface and you can't go to a browser, you can then go ahead and find the version of whatever exploit that you're looking for that would exist on exploit database. So this is an offline copy of the database, and it contains copies of the exploits that are on that specific system. So once you install it, every time that you run it, the goal would be to update it so that you can get the most recent version of the exploit database. You can search through the database by application name or vulnerability type. For example, SurfShark WordPress, and then it would give you the various vulnerabilities or exploits that exist for that specific content management system, being WordPress. And then it actually says PHP web apps, and then this is the name of it. So that's a TXT file, that's a PHP file, and that's pretty much it, right? That's basically it. Inside of the exploit database, there are, Python and JavaScript and a bunch of different types of languages as well. So it's not just limited to PHP or just TXT files. So anyways, what website would you use as a security researcher if you wanted to upload proof of concept? So you want to upload proof of concept, that would be GitHub. You're performing a pen test at a site with no internet connection. What tool would you use? And that would be SurfShark, right? There we go. All right, so now an example of manual exploitation. We are going to compound on the information that we gathered from the second task. So which one was it? The automated versus manual vulnerability. To exploit the vulnerable service. So ultimately, one of the most effective things that we can do is the ability to execute commands on the target. That's probably the most powerful thing that we can do. And if we can find remote code execution or some kind of ability to log into something remotely, that is the best thing that we can do. So for example, being able to execute commands on the target that is running the vulnerable application or service will allow us to read files or to execute commands that we previously wouldn't be able to perform using the application or the service by itself. We can then abuse this to gain what is known as a foothold on a machine. And a foothold is an access to the vulnerable machine's console, where we can then begin to exploit other applications or machines on the network. So we want to get a foothold. That's what we want to do, right? We want to get in and then establish ourselves in that machine so that we can start rummaging around inside their network and get into other applications or other machines or other users, all that good stuff. So Apache Tomcat was the one that we talked about earlier, right? So we're going to use an exploit to perform remote code execution on the application to be able to remotely execute commands on the vulnerable machine. Before we start, it's important to note that exploits rarely come out of the box and are ready to be used. They often require some configuration before they will work for our environment or our target. The level of configuration will vary upon the exploit, so you will often find multiple exploits for the same vulnerability on an application. And it's up to you to figure out which exploit is the most appropriate or useful to you. For example, this is looking at the exploit.python file, and they're using nano to get into it. And my machine ends up being the IP address of the machine that would be your machine, and the port that you want to run it on would be this port, right? So this is where you're attacking from. And then when you go into it right here, we would need to modify it. So they've actually modified it to, let's say, this was the IP address that was inside of the file when you downloaded it. And then this would be the IP address that you have on your actual local machine, right? So this is what needs to be connected to. So you're trying to connect to a target, but it needs to have something to connect back to. So this is what it's going to connect back to, and it's going to connect to it on that specific port. So once we've done that configuration, we can then read the exploit to understand how to use it. So this is what it would show. So if we do the exploit.python file and then we do -- help, in this particular case, there's an actual help menu. So to use this exploit, provide the following arguments: U, which is the URL of the application, and C, which is the command that you want to execute. So then we can actually use it and ideally run it successfully and gain a foothold on the target. So we can use it to upload a malicious file to the vulnerable application containing whatever command we wish to execute, where the web server will run this malicious file to execute the code. The file will first contain a basic command that we will use to verify that the exploit has worked. Then we are going to read the contents of a file located on the vulnerable machine. So this is what it looks like: exploit, and then U, which is the target, and then the command would be who am I. And if it gives us a response like this, that means it actually tells us who we are. That means it worked successfully. So if we go ahead and do cat flag.txt, assuming that whatever location we're in, so it's like after this, I would probably do command being pwd to find out what my working directory is. And then I would do command being cd to whatever, or ls. I would say the next one after pwd would be ls, so that it can list what I have inside of that directory. And if this file exists inside of my current directory, then I would do cat and then flag.txt so that I can actually get the data that's inside of that text file. So what type of vulnerability was used in this particular attack? And this is the remote code execution, because we were able to execute code on the target machine remotely. So now we actually have a virtual machine that we're going to start. That's going to be our target machine. And then I got to start the attack box so that we can actually go ahead and run it. So let's first read through this, and then, I mean, there isn't really much to read through. So we're just going to launch the attack boxes and then get this going. Okay, so the attack box is up. I'm going to open it up in a bigger browser window so it's not so cramped. And so it basically says deploy the machine attached to this, wait a minimum of 5 minutes for it to be fully set up. After 5 minutes, visit the web server running on the machine and in the browser of the device, etc., and try to find the answers here. So that's kind of basically it. So I'm going to just try to see if it's already up and running. I don't think it's been 5 minutes, honestly, but the IP address is up, so we'll see if it's actually up and running. If it's not up and running, then I'll just wait a few more minutes. But what are the questions? It says, what's the version of the application that's running? What are the name and version number of the application? Now use the resources and skills from this module to find an exploit that will allow you to gain remote access to the vulnerable machine and use it against the vulnerable machine. What is the value of the flag located in a web directory? So, okay. So first, we're going to do this. We're going to look at the IP address. Let's see if it's up. It is up. Okay, great. So it's CMNatics bookstore, and the version that we have is right here, version 1.0. So that's the version of the bookstore, and we could do a few different things. So let's see if we can actually just use SurfShark to find it. So if I just go here and do SurfShark and then do bookstore, let's see if anything comes up. Yeah, there are four things that showed up actually. So it says bookstore 1.0, and we have quantity, persistent, something, authentication bypass, multiple SQL injection, and then go to code online bookstore, multiple vulnerabilities. And that's kind of all we get here. So the information on this isn't really that great. So I wonder, because this is a part of the exploit database. So if I actually go to the exploit database website, and from here I go ahead and search for bookstore, let's see if something, okay, so here we go. These are the actual things that we just saw, right? 1.0, multiple SQL injection, quantity persistent cross-site scripting, authentication bypass, and then multiple vulnerabilities. So the ones that I think are the most applicable to us would be this thing, CSE bookstore 1.0. I believe that's it, right? And so from here, now we need to actually find out which one would be the one that would gain us access to remote code execution. So we would need to go through this and kind of read through this, and I'm going to do a little bit of homework, and I encourage you to do the same thing where you actually go through it and see if you can find the script that will actually allow you to get remote code execution on the target server that you have, right? So feel free to go ahead and do that, and I'm just going to pause the recording while I do my research, and then by the time I come back, I will have found it, and I just want you to try to do the same thing for yourself. So go ahead and do a little bit of research, but we should get back here in a couple of seconds. Okay, so what I found, this is the third one, basically. There weren't too many of them, so it should be kind of easy. When you read through them in the header right here, so it says, you know, this is what this one does, and that's for dumping the database, and this is persistent cross-site scripting, where you can add quantity as an XSS payload, and once added, each time we click on the My Cart option, it triggers as stored, so you're messing with the cart. And then this is the one where authentication bypass most likely is going to be the one that we can use to go ahead and launch the exploit and get that remote code execution. Now, I'm actually curious if I can just copy this and run it inside of this browser right here. I feel like I should be able to. So if I go and paste this here, okay, I do have internet access. Great. So, okay, great. So now we can go ahead and just download the exploit. And it's saved as 48960.txt, and let's see what the instructions here tell us, because there isn't much that we would need to do here. It's not a very large or a long breakdown here. So it basically says by default the admin portal is located at this location, and the admin interface can be accessed by unauthorized user exploiting the SQL injection vulnerability. And then it sends this data with a post request to the web page, and that's it. The referrer in this case would be this. So origin is this, and the referrer is this, and potentially you would be able to get a reverse connection to it to be able to connect to it. So let's see what's the first question that we had to answer. It's this piece, right? So what's the name of the software? it would be the bookstore. So let's see what we can find. So if we actually go down here, if I click on this online bookstore, it's going to open it up. Or no, it's actually just bringing me here. So let's see if I can find the actual version of this. If we click on Project Works, again, it also brings us to this specific piece right here. And let's see how else we can find this information. I believe the technical term here is the online bookstore version 1.0. I think that's what we're looking for here. So let's try that. So I think it says online bookstore v1.0. I believe that's the answer. So there we go. So now we have that, and I think we also found the remote code. So now it says use this exploit against a vulnerable machine. What is the value of the flag located in a web directory? The hint says depending on the exploit you use, you may land in a different location. The flag is located in this particular location. So depending on the exploit that we used. So online bookstore 1.0. Let me see, maybe there's another one, because bookstore was like a good starting point. I want to say that should be the one, honestly, but let's see if there's something else that we can use. Yes, there is. Indeed, there is. So see, I'm so happy that I tried it. So it's technically online bookstore with a space between the book and the store. And so if we actually look for online bookstore, now there is one right here that says unauthenticated remote code execution right in the title. And I think this is the one that we have to use. So I'm going to take this link right here, and then I'm going to go ahead and launch it inside of the attack box. So I want to get this one specifically inside the attack box, because I think that's actually the one that is of most use to us. And that's the one we're going to download. And so this is the actual link to the unauthenticated remote code execution piece. So if we download this one, I think I've downloaded it twice. It actually is a Python file, so that would be actually very handy for us. I am going to now go ahead and, so let's analyze this script real quick just so we can see what we need to do. So real quick, let's do the review. Let's see what stands out here. Okay, quick thing that stands out here is that this piece where it says the URL of the target, I think we need to actually change that to the URL of the target, and the rest of it. So let's run a quick little help command here as well, just so we can see what we can do here. So if I do Python, and actually, so let's see where we are. So it's here. There's the file that I downloaded, and now it's encapsulated by this. So hold on, I don't know why this looks the way that it does. I don't like the fact that there's a quote around it. I don't like that. So we're gonna remove this, and then why is it doing that? Oh, I gotta do that as well. Cannot remove this, no such file or directory. Okay, so if I do remove and then just do 47887.py, and then I do remove 47887 and the other one .py, now we don't have either one, because that, for some reason, that just bugged me. So, all right, so if I do this and then I go over here and I'm going to download it one more time just to make sure that I actually have the file. Okay, there we go. So there we go. So now we have the normal version of this. There it is. And so now we're going to do Python, and then we're going to do 47 and tab just to fill it out for us. And then we're going to do -help. Let's see what it does. So it says you need to give it a positional argument, which is the URL of the target, and that's pretty much it. Okay, so that's fine. So then we'll do that, and then we'll do the entry into the file, and we got to come down here and edit this one piece right here, which is the URL of the target, and I got to put my URL here, which is the target URL that we have, this guy. Got to do that. And we're going to do HTTP, and then we're going to paste the URL, and then we're going to do Control-O. Yes, I want to save it. X. Okay, very good. So now I'm just going to do nano one more time, because I just want to make sure that it saved it, and it did save it. Okay, great. There it is. So cool. So all right, now we can close this out. So basically now we just want to run it, right? So 47887.py, and then I want to give it the IP or the URL, right? So if I do that, okay, so we get this error. The last line says, perhaps you meant HTTP and that. Okay, fine. So we'll do this one more time. or we'll do this Python 47 and then download that, and then we'll do HTTP and then give it that piece and then paste that, press enter. Okay, great. So it's working. So now it says attempting to upload the web shell, verifying the shell, web shell uploaded, example command usage, and do you wish to launch? I'm going to say yes. And so what it says, why is not defined. Okay, what? All right, so I literally typed why, so I can't. Okay, so maybe it's a different version of Python that we're supposed to use, I think. So if we do it like that, that might be the reason, right? 125.230. And nope, still giving the same error. So what if we changed it to Python 3? Maybe that's it, because it might be like different versions of this run different interpreters. Oh, look at that. It worked. Nice. We actually got the RCE execution here. Okay, so all right, so it's not really that complicated, right? So we basically just had to make sure that we modify the script itself, because it gave us this little placeholder at the bottom right here that said, where is it? Right here. It says the URL of the target. So help equals the URL of the target. This piece needed to be modified so that we actually have the add argument URL for, you know, when the argument that we needed to add to it, right? So that was the thing that we needed to add, because we needed to add the URL of the target. And we even got that when we did the help menu, right? It actually gave us this argument URL, which means that we just needed to update this piece because it was actually going to do that piece. And then we needed to make sure that we were using the right version of Python so that it can use the actual right interpreter to be able to run the command, because it couldn't read Y. It was not reading it correctly. It just kept giving me that Y is not defined. It's like, bro, what are you talking about? So anyways, all right, so now we're here. Okay, great. So can I run ls? I can run ls. What is this location? What's in here? There's a flag right here. So does that mean that we are in the location? Yeah, we're in that location. So great. So now we need to get the flag. So we just do cat flag.txt, and there we go. Bookkeeping is the name of the flag, and that should be our answer. Let's try that. And it is wonderful. Oh wow. There was a sound effect. Okay. I don't know how loud that was, because that's recording from my computer sound. So if that was really loud, I'm very sorry about that. I have no idea. I don't know why the hell that just happened, but we finished it. We officially got the exploit launched, and it worked. Congratulations. Okay, so that was, it was pretty cool. It was like pretty straightforward. We were able to do some automated vulnerability, or we didn't do an automated vulnerability search really. We actually did the manual search. We looked at the website itself. We looked at the version that we found, and then we did a search on the exploit database, and then we found the exploit that we needed to use. And then once we found, and so I used, you know, the incorrect phrase, right? At first I had bookstore as one word, and then once we did online bookstore as a total search, then all of a sudden we got a different one that actually in the title said remote code execution. So that was really handy. That was like a good lesson learned. And then from there, we just had to modify the Python file, input the URL to actually add the IP address of the target that we wanted to connect it to. And then from there, we just needed to learn how to run it, where we ran the help command, and then we ran it, and we had to use the right version of Python. That was the other thing. So there were a few lessons, a few tweaks that we had to make in order to make it work, but it actually worked. We were able to pull it off, and it actually worked, and we were able to get remote code execution, and we launched it, and it was great. So hopefully you got the same result, right? Hopefully you were able to actually launch it, get access by remote code execution, and from there you were able to retrieve the flag the same way that I just retrieved the flag. So if you did, I'm very happy for you, and I'm glad that it worked for you as well, because I love it when hacks actually work. I love when running code and commands and things like that actually work. So hopefully it also worked for you. If you got value out of this video, and if you got value out of this channel, then I encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel, including on the Junior PenTester pathway, as well as the CompTIA Pentest Plus and everything else that we do on this channel. There's a lot of stuff that's available on the channel. and you can browse through the stuff that's available here. And of course, you can go through the playlists and all the good stuff. So there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff that's available if you wanted to just browse through it. If not, you can just click on this little search button right here and search for something in general. So we're going to be talking about Metasploit in a few more episodes, and there's a lot of stuff already on Metasploit, so you can get started on that, right, and learn more about Metasploit, or basically any other topic if you wanted to. So that's one of my big recommendations, is for you to actually find something else that might be useful to you and find it. If not, then just make sure that you drop a comment if you have any questions about what we did today in this video. Hopefully you were able to follow along and you were able to get the results that I got, so you don't need to ask a question. But if you do have a question, then go ahead and ask your question. I'd be more than happy to respond to you. And if you just want to say hi, or if you want to drop a comment, whatever, go ahead and do that as well. And that's pretty much it. So if you haven't done so already, make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel, of course, and drop a comment, because I do want to see you in the comment section. If you're serious about your CySec education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. And each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. I hope I see you in the Discord chats. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section. And that is it for today. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker/protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease. And I'll see you in the next video later. In this episode of the Junior PenTester training series, we are going to go through the vulnerability capstone room, and this is basically just going to be a practical room where we're going to run through each one of the questions that are over here. I've already launched the virtual machine and the attack box, and we're just going to go through these questions, and we're going to answer the questions, and ultimately we're going to get the final flag. So this is a very straightforward video. We're just answering questions based on the information that we've gathered so far, the skills that we've learned so far through the Junior PenTester pathway, and we're going to be combining the culmination of all of those skills and all of that knowledge so that we can go ahead and answer these questions today. So super excited to go through it with you. Hopefully you are as well. And this is a part of course, the TryHackMe platform. This is a subscriber-only room that was created for us by CMnatic, which is the person that created all of the previous rooms inside of this module for vulnerabilities altogether. And it's going to be available on TryHackMe for paid members. Now, unfortunately, to actually do these specific questions and answer these questions, you do need a paid membership with TryHackMe, but it's not expensive. It's very, very affordable, and in my humble opinion, extremely worth it, because you will get access to hundreds of rooms that you can use and implement all of the tactics to teach you to be a hacker, and you don't get into any kind of trouble with it. There are no felonies or anything like that. So you get to do as much hacking as you want without worrying about getting into any kind of trouble. So that is pretty much it. There's something in my eye, as you can see. And we're just going to do a quick little introduction to Hackaholics Anonymous, and then we're going to jump into the very first question. If you're serious about your CySec education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us jump into the vulnerability capstone challenge. All right, so question number 1, and basically the introduction to this whole thing is that we're going to be doing Acme, the Acme attack against the Acme company. They incorporated, recently set up a new blog, and the developer team has asked for a security audit. And it's our job to do a security audit, look for any kind of vulnerabilities that we can abuse. And as a part of this, literally question number 1 is to just deploy the machine and wait 5 minutes before it's available. And I've already done that. The IP address has been assigned to me, and the attack box is already up and running as well. So we can just go ahead and open it up in full screen so that it's a little bit easier for us to use it. But that is pretty much it for question number 1. So it doesn't really even count as a question, but just because in the timestamps I'm going to be doing question 1, question 2, etc. This was question 1, was to deploy the vulnerable machine and wait 5 minutes for the attack box to be up and running. So I already have all of this stuff available. I'm going to open up my web browser just so I can go and look at this website. And we will be ready to jump into question 2 officially. So let's do this. We'll load the site, and then we'll actually go into question 2 right now. Question 2 is very straightforward. It says, what's the name of the application running on the vulnerable machine? And so if we actually go to the IP address that they gave us, literally on the front it says, welcome to Fuel CMS. And I'm willing to bet that that is the answer. So Fuel CMS. And what is the version number of this application? And it's right there as well. So question 2 and 3 are pretty much a gimme. So version is not, what is it? I'm sorry, 1.4. I don't even know where the hell I got 2.3. So 1.4 is the version number of this application. So now the first question, or what should I say? This is the 4th question technically, but this should be a little bit, it should involve a little bit more digging. So question number 4. Question number 4 is, what is the number of the CVE that allows an attacker to remotely execute code on this application? So if you remember everything that we've done so far, we can do this in a few different ways. So we can actually open up the terminal and we can use search exploit. So I can do search exploit and then I'll do fuel CMS. I wonder if that'll work, and hopefully it'll bring something. So we have Fuel CMS 1.4.1, right? So these are essentially, these top 4 are for the 1.4 version. And remote code execution 1, 2, and 3 are all available. And we're looking for the CVE of these things. So they do exist, but we need to actually find the CVE number, the CVE ID. So I'll go into exploit database, and then we'll do the same exact thing. So it'll be Fuel CMS. And let's see what Fuel CMS brings us here. So we have the remote code execution 1, 2, and 3. They all exist. So the issue is finding the appropriate CVE. Now for this one, we have CVE 2018-16763. So I'm going to kind of just try all of them, I guess. So we'll start with the first one, remote code execution 1. And so the format is that. So we'll do CVE dash and then paste it, see if that's the one. And that, okay, that was very easy. I wonder if the other ones are the same thing as well. So if we do this one right here, remote, yeah, 16763. Yeah, so all of them are the same actually. So 2018-16763 is the CVE for all of the remote code execution stuff. So now using the resources and skills, so let's go into question, what is this? Question 5, right? So question 5. Question 5 says, use the resources and skills that you learned throughout this module to find and use a relevant exploit to exploit this vulnerability. There are numerous exploits out there that can be used for this, some more useful than others. And basically we're trying to get a remote code execution on this thing. So if we were to analyze this one, this seems to be what? A PHP script that we have over here, and it requires a couple of things. Let's see if any of the notes and arguments for this make it simpler to use. I'm going to go through this one, and I'm going to go through all the other ones as well. This is remote code execution 2 specifically. I'm going to go through all of them to see which one would be the easiest one to use. You can technically use whichever one you want because there are multiple versions of this remote code execution script. So whichever one you would be most comfortable with and whichever one it would end up getting you the best results, that would essentially be the one that I would recommend you use. I'm just going to read through them just so I can see which one I would like to use for myself. So based on what I've looked at, I'm looking at all 3 of them. The first one, number 1 right here, is a Python file. The next one is a PHP file, and the next one, the third one, is a Python file as well. This one seems to be a little bit more in-depth in their writing, and the other one, the first Python one, seems to be much more straightforward. So I'm going to use both of them. So I'm going to actually take these links and I'm going to go into the attack box machine inside the browser, and I'm going to download them both. And I will use both of them to see which one will actually successfully get me my exploit. So I'm going to download this one. That's the first Python file. I'm also going to go ahead and take this one over here, and I will download this one as well. That'll be my next Python file. And the notes here, there's no notes really, but we can also look at the help menus for these things. But you can kind of tell from here what it requires. So for example, there's this piece where it says if HTTP is not in the URL, enter, give them, the message to enter valid URL. So we know that we actually do need to put HTTP in the URL as well. If we go over here, we can see that the usage is Python 3, and then give the first argument, which would end up being followed by the URL itself. And the URL, there's no specific URL variable here. This is just an example that they give to us, but there's no actual URL variable that we would need to modify. I think it's just something that we would manually input as one of our arguments. So this one kind of seems the most promising for the first attempt. So I'm going to try to do this one for the first attempt, which is going to be the one that, and what's the actual number for this? It's 50477. That's the second one, yeah. 50477. So if I zoom in here, we should be able to see both of these in our downloads. There you go, 50477. So if I do, Python 3, and then I do 50477, and let's do help, see if there's a help menu. So fuel CMS, fuel remote code execution, you have U, and then give it the URL, and give it the thing, and then Python 5, that's basically it. That's kind of the full thing that we would have to do. So this one seems to be more straightforward than anything else. So I'm going to actually use this one as my first attempt. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this link, which is the target that I'm trying to get the remote code execution for. And from here, we're just going to run it exactly as it says, Python 3, and then we'll do the name of the script, -u, and then HTTP /, and then we give it that piece right there. Press enter, and connecting, enter command. Was that it? Did it work? Print working system is system, ls is system. That doesn't seem to be right. So lsla system, that does not seem to be right. It's not working. It doesn't seem that it's working. It kind of felt like it was connected, but it doesn't seem like it's working. The language is PHP, it says, but I don't think it is PHP because this all looks like Python for me. And so if it's supposed to connect, so it says while true, CMD input, style bright for yellow, enter command, style, a main URL is going to be this, request get main URL, etc. And so main URL is the fuel page select, etc., 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 quote plus the CMD, and that equals system. Okay, so where's the location of the flag itself, I should say. So if you're struggling, there's an exploit under attack box for vulnerabilities Capstone. I don't want to use the one that they've given to us. Some exploits will require you to set up a netcat reverse listener to gain access to the shell. So maybe that's what I need to do, because it doesn't seem like this would be the case, because this didn't ask for a proxy. There is another one that did ask for a proxy. I think it was the first one actually. Number 1 is asking for a proxy. The URL itself is requesting that, and it's trying to connect back to us on port 8080. So that could potentially be it. But this seems like it's already connected, which is kind of odd. But it just keeps giving me the same response. Enter command, and then it does that. So, I mean, let's see here. Let's see what we can potentially do with this. Because it seems to be that these are being requests that are being sent. So it seems like we're doing a request to this, meaning an HTTP request. So let me see what we can find here. Okay, so this specific exploit that is over here, as well as the other one that I had, they do not seem to be working. I think there are like some bugs or glitches or something. As we can see right here, none of them have actually been verified to serve useful. So I think we need to move on and try to use something different now. There was something that in the hint of this specific question, it said they already have one for us. And based on some Googling around and some like articles that I just read, this specific script, so if we actually go to the user share exploits portion, and then they have the vulnerability. So if we go over here, they have this Python file right here. So if I run this, so if I actually run the exploit.py and try to do a help menu, it'll actually, or excuse me, it needs to be Python 3, and then we do exploit.py, and then get into that menu. It actually opens up an application for us, and Fuel CMS right here, tested on version 1.4, created by Acid. This is actually something that exists on GitHub. So this is something that you can run. So one of the pieces right here is to get a reverse shell listener. That's one of the things that we can do, which is running the shell_me command, and then exit would run the exit command. And that's basically it. These are like all of the instructions that are available on the specific exploit here. So what I need to do is figure out what else needs to be modified to actually run this thing. So if I just do shell_me, it says enter the attacking machine IP and port. So if I do 10.201.100.108, which is going to be our specific attacking machine, I'll just do port 4444. And it says hope you had your listener ready. And oh, I see. So that would have technically connected, but in this particular case, I didn't have a listener ready on the other one, so it wouldn't have worked. So I need to see what's actually inside of this thing, and if I need to modify any pieces of it to connect to the target, because I need to declare a target in order for the exploit to work. So if there is no target that's been declared, then this is not going to work. So this is what we need to do to find out where the actual target needs to be input in here. Okay, so just based on the script right here, the only thing that I can think of is that we would actually need to provide the IP of the target machine that we're trying to connect to as an argument when we run it. So when we run this, we need to provide an argument to it, and that would be the target machine's IP address. And then from there, it'll ask us what would be the port that you would want to connect to and the IP of your attack box, so that it creates that reverse shell for you. So what I will do in this case is I'll give it the target machine of the IP address, in this case being this thing, or the target IP of the what is it? Yeah, the target IP of the, my words are like jumbling together. It's kind of getting late. So, okay, actually I have not launched it yet. So first we're gonna launch it. So exploit.py, and then it'll get us into this. So Python exploit.py, vulnerable IP address, that's the usage. So there you go. So it says Python exploit.py, give it the vulnerable IP address, and then you can run it. That's kind of what it is, and that's the menu. But it didn't work for whatever reason, because I thought it was the help menu that I was missing. Okay, so there's the usage. So Python 3, and then we'll do exploit.py, and then we give it the vulnerable IP address, paste that, press enter, and there we go. We have that. There we go. So now we do shell me and press enter. Now it says enter the attack machine's IP and port. So before I do that, I need to make sure that I run a netcat listener. So we will do nc lvpn, and then we will do the 10.201.100.108. Now, if you've never used netcat before, then you wanted to do it in the listening format in verbose output, and you want to designate a port, and you don't want it to use domain name. So you don't want, the N is for the numerical approach to this. So instead of doing a domain, you would do a numerical IP right here. P is we want to assign a port, V is we want to be verbose, and then L is that you want to launch netcat in listening mode. And you press enter, and the usage is incorrect, it seems. So let me see what I did wrong here. Okay, got it. So the issue was I didn't need to provide the IP address. It's been a while since I've used netcat. So netcat-lvnp, and then just give it a port. Now it's listening on the local machine on port 8787. So now we can go into this one and provide the IP address, right? So we want the IP, which is 10.201.100.108 on my machine. And then I'm going to do 8787, press enter. And now it says the listener has actually captured it. And there you go. My command line has changed officially. So now I want to know who I am. So who am I? I'm www.data. I want to know where I am. I am in this location. And I am looking for something inside of this computer by the name of flag. So let me see if I can actually even find this. Maybe it's flag.txt. I'll do this. I'll do asterisk flag asterisk. Press enter. Oh, I totally forgot to send the error messages away. And now it's going to go through all of these and show all the error messages. Dude, I totally forgot to get rid of the error messages. And now I don't know which one is which. Holy cow. Okay, so this is going to take a while. Okay, it ended. We need to modify this a little bit. So we're going to search in the root folder. We're looking for a type file, and we're going to look for the name, and we're going to do asterisk flag asterisk, and maybe even flag.txt. I'll try that, like asterisk flag.txt. And then this piece is important. You want to send all the error messages to the dev null folder. So now all those permission denied shouldn't find. There you go. There it is. So it's on home Ubuntu flag.txt. And you see it's just one entry that was returned. So now I can go ahead and find it. Home Ubuntu /flag.txt. And there is the flag. Beautiful. So that was the flag, and that is what the answer was. And we are all good with that. So congratulations. I hope you were able to follow along with that. It was a little bit kind of iffy towards the end there because I couldn't find a proper exploit, and we had to use the one that they provided to us. And this was the specific location of that exploit. And this is the fuel CMS that was developed by Acid, AC, the number 1, and then D. This is also available on GitHub if you want to go ahead and get it. And the run is Python 3, and then the name of the file, and then you have to give it as an argument the IP address of your target. And then from there, you just need to make sure that you have a netcat listener that's listening on this end. And so let me see if I can exit this thing. And I can't exit it. There we go. Control-C will exit it for you. And the command to launch your netcat listener is nc-lvnp, and then you just give it a port that you want to listen on. And then on this side, when you do shell_me, it'll get the attack machine IP and port. And so you give it the IP address of your attacking machine, colon, and then the port number that you're listening on. And then you will go ahead and get that. And finally, the command that actually worked for me to find it once I was inside of the target machine was find /, and then you're looking for a file type. So -type F to find a file, and then -name, and then inside of quotes, I just do asterisk flag.txt, because usually that's what it's called. It's a flag.txt file is how they, in TryHackMe, that's how they do it. And then the this piece right here. That piece right there gets rid of all of these permission denied messages, so you don't see all of them, and it just gives you the response that actually has what you were looking for. And in this particular case, this was the name of the file that we were looking for, and then I did a simple cat command, and that printed it onto the screen. And that was pretty much it. We officially wrapped it. So hopefully you were able to follow along with that exercise. For the most part, like all of the questions right here were very, very simple and straightforward. The last piece was the piece that I had a little bit of a challenge with, and mostly was because I couldn't find a working exploit. And the exploit that I did find, which was the exploit that they provided to us, that's something that was available on GitHub. So it wasn't something available on the exploit database. So these guys right here, because they haven't successfully been tested, and we see all these X's right here, they were not legitimate. I tried to use them, but they were not legitimate. So the one that ended up working was the one that was actually inside of GitHub repository, which is also the one that they also provided to us. So I just used the one that they provided, which is that fuel CMS application that we used. And from there, you know, once you have your netcat listener listening and you establish your reverse connection, then you just get the flag. Fairly simple, and you already saw how I just did that. So hopefully you were able to follow along and you were able to complete the vulnerability capstone challenge. And the next piece of this whole thing is when we now go into Metasploit for the next series of videos. So the next 3 videos are going to be on Metasploit, and that's going to be even more fun that we're going to end up doing, and more hacking and more great stuff. And then by the end of this, we're actually going to have the privilege escalation portion, and that's pretty much it. And then they have this PT1 Junior PenTester certification that they have available that I have not gotten. I'm working on CompTIA Pentest Plus, so I'm going to skip that one. But I just wanted to make sure that you guys had all of the foundations and everything that you needed to get Junior PenTester and just kind of understand pen testing and all that stuff. So as you go from this and you go to the CompTIA Pentest Plus playlist, you'll have a really strong foundation and a really strong understanding of that. So hopefully you got value out of this video. If you did indeed get value out of this video and you want more videos like this one, I encourage you to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel, especially as we wrap up Junior PenTester and as we go ahead and wrap up CompTIA Pentest Plus in the upcoming weeks. Leave any questions or comments that you may have in the comment section below about the video that we did today, or about other videos that you may have watched, or if you just have any questions about anything else, leave those questions in the comment section below. And of course, make sure that you like and subscribe and do all that good stuff. There's a bunch of content that's available on this channel, so you can browse through everything that we have over here, or you can go ahead and click this little button right here, this little search button, and then you can search for anything that you would be interested in, or it's like it applies to what you're looking through right now. That could be something that you can search for, and there's a lot of stuff available over here. There's over 400 videos right now that's on this channel, and it's going to only keep growing. So there should be something that you can find as you study more about cybersecurity, pen testing, and system administration, IT, things like that. So hopefully this did serve useful to you and you find everything else that you're looking for. And as always, make sure that you like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out on this channel. And then of course we have Hackaholics Anonymous. If you're serious about your CySec education and you want access to me on Discord, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there. Or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you will be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. I hope I see you in the Discord chats. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section. And that is it for today. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, your favorite network and system attacker/protector. If no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease. And I will see you in the next video later.